I'm Bob Mover, and I'd like to welcome you all to our podcast on the real side. Music you're hearing is a composition called On the Real Side by the great Walter Davis Jr. I'm very honored and happy today to have a longtime friend and his wife, a new friend, Mr. Randy Brecker and Ada Rovatti are
Hello.
here together. And I was doing a little research for this. Even when I know my friends, I never know enough of them. Like I had no idea who Randroid was, for example, and we'll get into that too. And so Ada, you have a new record that's called The Green Factor.
Oh, that's the new one. Is called The Hidden World of Piloo.
The
Green
Hidden
Factor.
World of Piloo.
Yes, that's the latest one. Green Factor was a little while back, but is perfect for March because it's a Celtic oriented.
Right, St. Patrick's Day and everything,
Yeah.
right? And the snakes leaving Ireland and all that. And
Yeah.
I have a good friend, an Irish flutist named Red Sullivan. His actual name is Cone. But when I met him, I was doing the Guinness Drinking and Jazz Festival.
Oh.
And, I was playing that, and I met him at a session, and I said, "Man, you can really play. You sound really good." He says, "Yes, Ireland is the land of poets and saints. The only problem is all the poets and saints leave." But in fact, Michael, Mike, Randy's brother, and I were very close friends, and one of the things that Mike was practicing, we used to practice together, and sometimes we would practice over the phone because we didn't have time to see each other, but we'd get into our telephone practicing together. And I remember Mike playing this Celtic music that he was into practicing for a while. He was playing that, and they're quite challenging technically.
Yeah, there's a lot of because kind of trying to emulate the fiddling kind of 16th notes with a lot of repeats and one of my favorite tune of his it's the tune "It's Been Real." That's totally based on the Celtic and Irish kind of a culture music style. So
yeah, and so this new record is also got some Celtic influence in it, and
well,
not really. No, I don't.
No, I don't think so. The new one.
Tell them about it. It's interesting.
Well, it's kind of different from my previous project because I wrote for strings, I wrote for singers, I wrote lyrics, and it's kind of challenging since I'm not English is not my main language, but I tried. It came out okay, I think, and wrote all the arrangement and everything. So it's just slightly different from my previous one. So far it's doing good. I just wanted to try something different. So
right. Well, you had written on that record "Sacred Bond."
Yes.
It was very plays Rovatti. I was listening to some of this. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I wasn't so familiar with your music, and even some of Randy's music. I mean, when you know people as friends, you kind of know what they played with you, and some of their more well-known things. But doing this podcast has really given me an interesting insight into a lot of people, and I would really, check out things that I hadn't known about that. And you were quite a discovery. You're a very talented lady.
Thank you.
And I wanted to, you came from Pavia.
Yep, in northern Italy, Pavia, a little town called Mortara.
Mortara,
Mortara. That is actually from 8th century, and they actually translate is the grave of death.
Grave of death.
Because there was a famous massacre, and that's how he was born. It gave the name.
What a wonderful place!
Town. Yeah, happy town.
Wow. Italy is funny. I mean, everybody in Europe in general, they love to show you their history as you go through it. And Walter Davis Jr. told me a Paul Chambers story that was, I mean, it'll offend somebody, but anyway, what he said was, as he was going through Rome, the tour manager was saying, "Oh, and over there is the Colosseum, and over here is the Race Corso, and all these things, and everything it's ruins, right? I mean, everything is kind of pretty much left the way it was, thousands of years ago, and or hundreds, And Paul Chambers says to the guy, he says, when you come to our country, we don't show you our garbage."
Ouch.
Ouch. Sorry to Italians there. I didn't say it.
Yeah, well, here is that the garbage is only 400 or 500 years old. That's why.
Right, it's new garbage practically. It's just sort of
brand new.
Brand new garbage. So you started out as a classical pianist, right?
My grandmother was a piano player, and that's how I started when I was 4. And my first, I could read music before reading words. So it's really my first language.
Wow, that's funny. So she got with you, and you started playing the piano at around 4 years old. And,
classical, and helped a lot because I still write everything on piano. And somehow I always pick the perfect range for B-flat instruments. That's interesting how the brain works.
Well, that is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think in concert too. I mean, I just generally, even with the saxophone, it's an extension of the piano to me. I mean, I played piano not as well as you did. I had a coordination problem, and I used to love Bach, and I would play it one hand at a time because I couldn't play two hands together.
Yeah, that's
so I would play the right hand, and then I would play the left hand, but I never could get them because I was born with a gross motor difficulty. So I would have been an athlete if I could have, but I had no talent in that area. And same as a piano player, I really heard it, but I just couldn't put it together. But the saxophone is nice; it just goes in one direction. It's up or down. You know what I mean? It's a simple instrument that way, really. Jerry Copeland used to say it's a kazoo, saxophone next to the trumpet or some serious instrument. It's a kazoo, So then, your interest in jazz. How did you come to jazz? How did that evolution take place?
Well, my brother used to listen to R&B and blues, and that's how I started I used to listen as a teenager to English pop. That's what was on fashion back then there in Italy. So, and just listening that different kind of style of music kind of got me interested in about the horn section, and he put together a band, and he played guitar, and he wanted to do that kind of style of music, and he kind of convinced me to kind of pick up. He wanted a horn section, and he told me that if I play saxophone, I would be popular with boys. That's the only reason I got it.
You need the saxophone for that, but it may have helped.
I got my boy here.
That's your boy, which is how did that came about? You guys were in a small group together, or how did tell me a little bit about how that you guys got together?
Well,
I don't like when people say guys.
I had a gig in Switzerland with Fritz Reynolds in Aarau, which wasn't far from where the next stop was going to be, her hometown, where there was a very good big band, and I was going to go play with big band. I was guesting with Franco Ambrosetti.
I know Franco.
Yeah, so 2 trumpets, and they, her band sent her as an emissary with some music and directions, and she explained what we'd be doing. I guess that was her job, and we just kind of hit it off. We talked for a while.
Then I moved to Paris, so we kind of I chased him.
Letters. This was kind of pre-email, so we wrote letters to each other, and I was going to Paris a lot back then. And then the wagon train started to circle my apartment. I don't know, I suppose.
And then I came here in New York. I already spent time in the United States because I studied at Berklee College of Music. I won a scholarship, so I was there for a little while.
Well, you won a scholarship as a saxophonist or as
a saxophonist? As baritone player, matter of fact.
Wow.
and And then, so I already spent some time in the United States, and that's when after I moved to Paris, and then I decided to try to come back in New York to take private lesson and just spend a little time here. I just thought that New York had to be at least one stop in a lifetime, you know. And the end of that stop became my permanent spot.
That's how it works. Sometimes, you know, I mean, actually, there are some pretty good female. Claire Daly is a very nice baritone player.
Yes,
female.
It's a good friend of mine. She's lovely.
She was a student of mine. I taught 3 semesters at Berkeley.
Oh, God.
In 1980, I decided to leave New York because I was having too much fun, and was afraid I might not live till 30 if I kept having so much fun. And so I thought Boston was a nice stop to make in between. So I taught for 3 semesters at Berkeley and had a lot of wonderful students, and you know, a whole generation. Half the cats actually that are in New York, and the other half kept me going to Europe to work with them after, you know, for many years. It was a good, amazing year and a half that I spent there. But I left Berkeley because Chet Baker called me and said, "So you're teaching at Berkeley, and you're 29 years old. Aren't you a little young to be out to pasture?"
Yeah.
And so then he had a tour of Europe, and he just wanted to bring him and me. No, we'd pick up rhythm sections as we went along, and it paid well, and you know, and it was Chet, so I took it, you know. But I never went back to Berkeley. But it was, you know, it was a good environment. When you were in Boston, did you get next to you know, to Jerry Bergonzi and?
Yeah, later I studied with George Garzone and Fred Lipsius, and I was able, even if he already retired, I was able to take some lesson with
Joe Viola.
Joe Viola, yes.
Yeah.
He was the master, yeah.
Yeah, Joe used to send me students for improvising. One time I played Sandy's on July 5th. And July 5th is really a hell of a night because nobody goes out on July 5th, the Monday following the July 4th weekend.
It's a recovery day.
There were 4 people in the club. I played, it was a great band. Joe Cohn was on guitar and we were cooking. But the 4 people in the club were my aunt and uncle who lived in Marblehead, Joe Viola and his wife. So it was wonderful. Spent the whole night just playing for Joe, you know.
That's nice.
You know, so then you guys, you people met, and you moved to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and you just got together, and you have 1 or 2 children. How many children?
We have 1 kid. She's 15. As a matter of fact, I need to go to pick her up soon.
Yeah, I just wanted to get you in this though. That's what
Ironically enough, she's playing baritone now.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very good.
Oh, yeah. I have 3. I have one who's should I say 40, and then she'll get mad at me, but okay, she's 40. And then I have 2 little ones from another union who live down the street from me, and I see them quite a bit. One just turned 17 and one turned 10.
Oh,
Wow, great.
That's awesome.
So I have them too, you know, and I think it keeps you, you know, very youthful. I think it helps.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
definitely.
I saw this thing and I thought of the Brecker brothers and you know, that whole sense of thing. I saw a little something that John Cleese said about creativity. And he said basically what it comes down to is not your IQ and not how many hours you practice. What comes down is your sense of play.
Mm-hmm.
The most creative people have a sense of play. So in a way, as long as you have children, you won't lose that sense of play. It'll be there, you know, and I think that, you know, even in the music, I've heard of you guys making music together, there's a sense of play in it. And that, you know, also brings me to Mike and Randy, that having known those guys before, like Oscar Wilde knew Doris Day before she was a virgin, I knew them before they were the Brecker brothers. No. But there was always a sense of, you know, a great sense of play involved with the 2 of them. They're both playful cats. I mean, you know, like senses of humor, and you know, that was, I think, what separated you from a lot of other people who were, you know, dead serious, which is good because I guess fun is serious too. But
Yeah. Well, Coltrane was the one who said, I think, there's fun in being serious. And, uh, you know, of course we were serious, but we had a good time together. And I've just always had a great time with music. It's really as simple as that. It's so much fun to play, and it still is. And we also have a lot of fun with a lot of kidding around. And I don't know, she's got a hilarious sense of humor, and I think that shows in a lot of our music. Yeah, not only when I would write lyrics, we could talk about that later, but in the compositions, there's always kind of
Twist.
a weird, fun twist or something in the tunes that people seem to latch on.
yeah, I mean that's where, like, I'm not a huge fan of what you call, I don't know, funk or whatever it is. Mike told me not to come to the concert sometimes. He said, no, you don't want to come. You won't like it.
Yeah.
You know how Mike was like that. You know, and I say, well, you know, can I come? What if I just come and walk out? You know, can I come long enough to leave? You know, but you know that there sometimes, uh, you know, things take themselves too seriously, and I think that you guys didn't do that. Now that must come from your upbringing too. I mean, because according to Mike and according to uh, what I did, you know, I know your dad was a lawyer who played piano and wrote
Yeah.
tunes and sang, and that must have been, that sense of fun must have been. He must have been a fun dad. I get the feeling.
Yeah, that he was. He wasn't traditional in any sense. Uh, you know, he was a devout atheist for one thing, and he made that very clear all the time. And he was a typical, I don't know, left-leaning person with, but at the same time, he was quite an intellect. He read a lot, so, and very intelligent, and he really wrote great songs and played very good piano. He could have easily been a professional, but he came, you know, his parents were born here, but they were poor, and he was afraid about the lifestyle, so he continued to play and write songs his whole life.
He wrote music with lyrics.
Yeah, he wrote a tune for me when I was 2 weeks old, and he just destiny made its reared its head. And the first line of the tune, I'm in the crib, 2 weeks old, said, "I'll love you. I'll be so proud of you, Sonny, when I hear you give out on that horn." So, and he mentioned the lyrics had something to do with you're going to play drums, maybe a hot fife, and love music even more than your wife. Well, which isn't necessarily true, but he didn't know I'd be married to her. So my future was forecast at 2 weeks old. It's a really good song too. He actually sang it on one of my records. He came up to New York because the original was too scratchy, and I wrote a semi-classical piece around it, and then I sang some lyrics. I was getting divorced at the time, so the irony of the title of the tune was "The Hottest Man in Town," and I was kind of down in the dumps at the time. So it's an interesting suite, so to speak. But he was great.
What record is that on?
That's on a record called "Into the Sun," and actually won a Grammy. So I guess somebody liked it. It's a good record.
Oh, I'll check it out.
Sorry, guys, I have to stop you because I have to run and get my daughter.
Well, it was a pleasure to meet you this way.
Sorry that
And,
you know.
and well, you know, and yeah, you know, maybe I'm sure we'll meet again.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for
I'll
being
send
here.
you the record so you can really
Yes,
get the.
yes.
We'll do that. Send you the files at least.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Yeah.
And I'll talk about it more after you leave because it really is a stunning achievement as far as I'm concerned. But
You know, a marriage, divorce, all these kind of things, you know, I mean, I've seen you through a few relationships, and you've seen me
Yeah.
through a few of those in the course of our lives. And I always think of, I was in Ireland with Red Mitchell, this same Cork festival, and Red and I got to hang out quite a bit. And his wife, I believe her name was Doris, and he was so nice to her. Like we would have breakfast with Red and maybe Teddy Edwards and Bobby Shue. They were there,
Yeah.
you know, and like it was a lovely breakfast club we had, and dinner club. We ate our meals together. But I noticed how nice Red was being to his wife. You know, I said, Red, tell me the truth. When you get home and you're not around anybody, you yell at her and you scream at her, right? And you're like, you know, really impossible to live with. But this is all a front you're putting on.
Ah.
And she says, no. I mean, she was there when I said, you know, she said, no. She said, Red is the nicest, gentlest man you could ever imagine. He's always so nice to me. I think he yelled at me once in the 10 years we've been together when I said I was going to quit smoking, and he knew I'd been smoking in the bathroom. But that's the only time I ever remember him getting mad and this and that. And Red whispers to me in a stage whisper, she's my fourth wife, Bob.
Ah. So he's finally getting it. He got it right. Yeah, he was a sweet guy. I didn't know him that well, but we talked on the phone and did a couple gigs together. And I got to know him at Bradley's, so to speak. And wonderful player.
Yeah, and talk about fun. He had a great sense of fun about him.
Yeah, sure. Well, there was a sense of humor in that family. I didn't really get to know him, but I went out with Whitey, his brother's daughter, for a while after I got divorced, who's married to Terry Clark now. And we just saw them several months ago in Toronto. It was good to see both of them. It had been years. And Whitey sure had a great career as a TV writer with all the great comedy shows he was a part of. So
White,
that,
the Red's brother who also played bass.
yeah, they also played bass, but he made a living. He was very successful TV writer, Get Smart, all, and they had something to do with all the Norman Lear shows. It was amazing.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah, and she grew up in Hollywood, so she told me a lot about him. I never really met him, but must have run in the family a little.
Well, there was that record they made with Blue Mitchell called Red, Whitey, and Blue.
Yeah.
um, but back to your dad. So your dad was a fervent atheist. So that did you guys? I never actually discussed this with Mike either. So you were not bar mitzvahed or anything, or was your mother?
Oh no, we never. You know, sadly too, because there was a little file that we years later we found from the rabbi from the local synagogue, and this guy was absolutely. I remember my sister was there after my parents passed away. We were at my apartment, and she brought a file from the rabbi, and this guy was absolutely brilliant, a real intellect, and we could have probably learned a lot from him.
How did your parents know? Was he just a friend of your parents, or?
Yeah, I don't think he was. He was trying to talk my parents into letting us go to Hebrew school or whatever, or get involved with the synagogue, and he was explaining why, and I forget all the details, but my brother-in-law was there, and his comment was basically, man, what did this guy do the rest of the summer? I mean, he wrote literally pages and pages to my parents trying to talk them into letting us go.
Really?
So I read a lot of the history, of course, on my own, but yeah, he was, and he admitted one day he was over once again to my apartment. It's another typical dad story. That people that had religion in their lives, of course, we have music, which kind of is a substitute and a good one. But he was mentioning, you know, I realize that people that do have religion generally probably are happier than people who don't. But here I do have a certain amount of religion, and here it is. And he reached into his briefcase and he pulled out Playboy magazine in the centerfold. That's So that's him. I don't know.
That was your dad.
Yeah.
That's well, that's certainly something deserving of worship. Um,
There's something to be said for that, I
Something
guess.
to be said for that. There really is. But in let's say, um, you know, well, Bartz and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about this very thing, Gary Bartz,
Yeah.
and saying, that music in a way is the true religion, because at least for us it is a true religion, because we go around and we have people, the jazz community, which encompasses a whole lot, is actually very similar to, as if we were evangelists. We are kind of that for the music.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a substitute. And it has the same function. It's a spiritual thing. You're not dealing with it's a thing you can't quite explain, but it's a spiritual thing. Music is at the core of everything, and it's at the core of our every breath, really. It's our lives from beginning to end, from the moment we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, where there's little things running through our head musically all the time, whether we have the instrument in our hands or not.
That's true. That is how we work, and I guess that's how, the spirit. Well, from the generation that we came from too, especially with the influence of Coltrane. Let's say the generation previous to us.
Yeah.
Drugs were sort of such an innate and inherent part of the culture. I think that carried over to us too, to some extent.
Yeah.
But also we had the buffer of somebody like Coltrane, who served as such a spiritual example for a lot of people, and Sonny Rollins too, my friend,
Sure.
was searching, but they had a drug history. It was definitely a part of their life, and then they transcended. They seemed to go to, Ira Sullivan also was very close to me, and everyone. It seemed that religion became a replacement for the drugs, and feeling this higher power in the music. How do you stand? In other words, what are your spiritual beliefs to this day, in the sense of a higher being or a higher power, as opposed to your father's, or concurring with your father's? Since you brought it up, I'm curious where you stand.
Well, I can't wrap my head around the infinity, as if the universe, or the 3 billion universes there are, were all always here. So I feel that there was some kind of creator, and that not maybe a man with a beard who's looking over us, but there was some kind of creation that happened. And I live my life generally in awe of all living things and breathing things, and it's carried through, because I am serious about learning, not only music, but I like to read, and it all stems, I think, from my belief that there was some kind of creation going on, whatever it was. I just can't wrap my head, like I said, around the infinity, that everything was always here. So something had to start it.
Yeah, I mean, Einstein has a theory, has a little something. I can't quote him right now. I could find it, but it's like we're like children being led to this ridiculously large library of books, and we don't know who wrote them or where they come from or this and that. We know, though, that they're there, and there's knowledge to be had in it, but much too much for us to absorb. But I mean, I feel that in your music, there's definitely a spiritual quality to it. There's something that that feels it's going. I feel also. I think that it's kind of an astral thing when we play, in a way, when you're really cooking, when we really get into it. It's not us. It is us, but you get that feeling too, right?
Yeah, of course. You leave Earth.
Yeah.
You're really into it, and your eyes are closed. You leave the planet for a while and go into another sphere, and that's part of that was, in a way, what makes it all worth it when you get into that state. Whether and do it naturally is even more a miracle. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been substance free for quite a while now, like a decade. I mean, I was never well, I had moments where I teetered on the edge of addictions, but something always pulled me.
Yeah, I was the
back.
same. We're on the same page with that. I never got that far pulled into it, but at the same time, I really have enjoyed it. And I didn't do any programs. I just got tired of the whole thing, and I really enjoy being sober.
That kind of happened to me too. It was like a life thing, a certain phase. Well, like the old joke about the guy who he's 95 years old. He goes to the doctor and he says, the doctor says, "What's your problem?" He says, "I can't pee." And the doctor says, "Well, how old are you?" He says, "I'm 95 years old." Doctor says, "You've peed enough."
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not quite that, but anyway, I was checking out some things musically. Now, a very, one thing that knocked me out. I saw this trio with Ronnie Cuber and Bill Evans, the saxophone player, and you play like this funk vamp sort of thing. Ronnie's laying down the bottom, and there was no rhythm section. And that was beautiful.
That might have been a tune of mine, and I'm trying to remember the name. I don't know if you remember it, but that was one of the reasons that we did that tour and brought Ronnie into the band, because it featured. I had a tune on a record called, boy, I don't even know. It might have been 34th and Lex. Too bad I can't remember the name of the tune, but it features the baritone, and Ronnie was really the only guy that could have played the thing. The saxophone line throughout, and it was great that tour is one of our first tours in Europe as Soul Bop, which was what Bill named the band, and we kept that thing together. Not with Ronnie, just with I don't think Ronnie ever did a tour with us again, but that particular tour, and I remember a lot of it because it was the first trip. We had a ball playing. It was all new music, and it was a new band, and everybody sounded great, and the audience loved it, and we got to really travel throughout Europe that summer. The only thing was there was a strike in some kind of baggage strike in Paris, so we all lost our luggage for a couple of weeks. And
Grève, one of my first words in French.
Yeah.
Strike and grève.
And I bought a new suitcase, a large suitcase, and everybody bought some new clothes, and we were happy to have something. And then they lost the new suitcase too, so we ended up in Sicily with nothing, and it was 100 degrees out, and Ronnie knocking at my door every day. Did they find it? Did they find it? And I said, no. As soon as they find it, I'll let you know. You don't have to knock every 10 minutes.
Yeah, Ronnie was not patient.
Yeah. But that was a great tour.
Did they find it?
Eventually, we got everything back. Yeah.
You did.
That's when we finally left Paris to go home.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've heard. Those are the horror stories of the road. Ronnie, I miss Ronnie, man. I used to have a wonderful time with him. He was very. He took no prisoners. When you were a saxophone player, man, you had to be at your best with him, or he would kill you.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And it's funny because we got along really well, and we got along on the bandstand too. But just as soon as we were in the bandstand, it was like we were now gonna go 15 rounds.
Yeah.
But up to then we're cool, But yeah, that was beautiful. Another thing I heard that I really was enjoying was there's a recording of Joe Henderson's tune Homestretch, and it's a festival where you and Freddie are the trumpet players,
right?
And Mike and Joe Henderson and Joe Farrell, and
that was a great band. That was the Oryx Jazz Festival. I believe it was 1980, and the name of the band was Fusion Band D.
Fusion
D.
D.
Yeah, there was so many musicians there and so many different styles represented, all put together by, this was a huge festival. We played at baseball stadiums. They
Band?
yeah, it was, and all different styles of music. Benny Goodman was there, a lot of the older cats back then.
Wow.
Eddie Wilson. So they play a wide spectrum of music. That's when jazz was really big in Japan. So we played stadiums, and we'd be playing in front of 50,000 people. It was amazing. And that particular Fusion Band D was just great with George Duke and Peter Erskine, Alphonso Johnson, and great guitarist, blues guitarist. I can't think of his name right now, but we had a ball.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it. I mean, it was and I never knew, I mean, there's all this controversy over Mike and Joe Henderson and this kind of thing, and I just remember when Mike and I used to practice a lot together, I was aware of Joe Henderson, but who made me really aware of Joe Henderson was Mike. He'd say, here, this guy, you got to listen to him deeper, which I did. And also Joe Farrell, who also was very beloved. Mike loved his playing too.
Yeah. And Mike always gave, especially Joe, a lot of credit as being part of his jazz vocabulary. And just Joe was had his moments. So they eventually patched up whatever. Joe had mentioned that Mike had stolen a lot of his stuff or something to that effect in an interview. And sometimes he just talked, because he loved Mike too. In fact, that same festival and the same band, we did one of Mike's tunes called Strap Hanging. And Joe was at the side of the stage. They broke the band up, so we each had our little featured moment. And Joe was at the side of the stage, and he was, as you know, kind of an introvert. He didn't really talk much unless you got him entered into a conversation, and was not a really demonstrative kind of person. But he was at the side of the stage just stomping to the beat of Strap Hanging. And at the end, he shouted out, he said, "Man, that's that Neanderthal shit." So
that's that Neanderthal shit.
So Mike took that as a real compliment, and they basically, they always really got along. Mike loved him. So he was very hurt when Joe mentioned whatever he did about Mike's not mentioning Joe enough when in interviews. And eventually, I was there when they kind of patched it up. I didn't hear what they were saying to each other, but we all ran into each other at an airport somewhere, and they went off and had a long talk.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad that happened. So that's a beautiful story too. Neanderthal. I like that. Oh. Yeah. Joe was very articulate. I mean, he would say things in a very unique fashion.
Oh, yeah, man, that guy was really, he spoke fluent French, and he wasn't a guy who showed it off. I remember being in a cab in France, and it was in the front seat, and he had a 20-minute conversation with the cab driver. And
he also spoke German and Spanish.
Yeah.
I was when we were in Kongsberg once. He was over there with Woody Shaw, and I was there. Dave Lehman had broken his leg, so I was in Norway playing other concerts, and I got a phone call. Can I come to Kongsberg and sub for Lehman with his own band with Quest, with Ron McClure and Billy Hart and Byrack? Anyway, we're at this kind of reception before the festival. They got drinks and everybody's hanging out, one of those things. And I was speaking Italian to somebody because I can speak Italian and French also. And Joe, who I'd met once before, but never really got to hang with, walked over to me and said, a fellow polyglot.
Ah.
And then that began a conversation about a lot of things. And
he mentioned that he picked up all the languages in the service. He said, "No, I just picked them up, by the sound." And a French friend of mine listening to him speak French said, you know, he has absolutely no, I would think he was French. His French
Wow.
was perfect. So
Yeah,
quite,
he's another guy. He did the New York Times crossword puzzle in pen.
yeah.
The Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle. That they say Al Cohn could do that too, but you know, that's funny, Joe.
Oh, and then Robin Ford was the guitar player in Fusion Band D. He was fantastic too. He's another great player that I've had the pleasure of playing with off and on throughout the years.
Yeah, he was a wonderful. I heard him with Miles a long time ago. Um, just a little bit more about your history. So your mom was a portrait painter. Is that what she?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she ended up doing portraits because people paid her, but she was just an artist. She was, and she had a pretty wide variety of styles. She could do abstract if she wanted, but she could also duplicate photographs, and they looked like they were perfectly duplicated. So and when she was in her mid 50s, in Philadelphia, she went to the museum school at the famous art museum in Philadelphia and graduated. She went to just to learn for 4 years and got a
She was a
degree
school
in
art.
art. Yeah. So
Now,
she's curious too.
did you and Mike exhibit any visual art talents?
Well, that's a good question. I went to art school one summer and I still like to draw, and Mike would like to doodle and make faces, but I don't have that gift of imagining, for instance, album covers. My mind doesn't run in that way, and I don't think Mike's did either. Ada, on the other hand, does. She designs her own album covers. On this record she was just talking about, not only did she design the cover, which is great, she took the photo herself of herself dressed up in clothes that she had designed and made. So,
Wow.
but both me and Mike were just musically inclined. I can't say that we were visually the same way. And uh, uh, I just had music in my life. I don't have any hobbies. Mike liked his chemistry set, was more of a sportsman, good basketball
A
player.
basketball player.
Yeah. So he was into his chemistry set and basketball really before the tenor took over. He played alto in ninth grade. He had studied clarinet with Leon Lester from the Philadelphia Orchestra for 5 years while I was studying with Sigmund Herring, also from the Philadelphia Orchestra. And Mike didn't exactly take to the sound or whatever of the clarinet, but of course it gave him a good basis. And it's also what I'm told for the other woodwind instruments, since it was so difficult to play.
Well, whatever helped him, he sure got it. And
Yeah, he sure did, man. And I sadly didn't really witness a lot of his development because I had left home to go to Indiana University. It was about 3.5 year difference in our ages. I do remember him playing alto and practicing with Mark Cohen, who later became Mark Copeland, the pianist, on our front porch. But in 10th grade, he just really got into Coltrane, and the rest is history. Years later, probably 4 or so years later, he was 19. When he went to Indiana University, I was playing with Horace Silver in Chicago at the club there. And yeah, and Mike had gone to Indiana University and started a band with Randy Sankey. People get confused with the two Randys, called Mrs. Seaman Sound Band, and they had won gotten into the finals at the Notre Dame Jazz Festival that year, whatever year this was, probably 1968. But they played a jazz rock version of Light My Fire, and they got disqualified.
really? Yeah.
Made headlines in Downbeat. I think a couple of the judges were Oliver Nelson and, well, guys that were a little more conservative, maybe Ray Brown. But during that week in Chicago, I was playing with Horace, with Billy Cobham and Benny Maupin, and I brought them over, and I hadn't heard Mike play really in years, since he was really starting out. And we had a little jam session at their crash pad where they had their instruments, and our jaws dropped. He was already a diamond in the rough. He had already kind of combined those influences, Coltrane with King Curtis and the more R&B influenced tenor players. So that aspect was already there, and he already had the chops up and down. So our jaws dropped, and shortly after he moved to New York.
And that's when you made your first record, and you used Mike on that record.
Yeah. Mike was 19 and had obviously never recorded before, and had barely been in New York when we did that record together.
It's called Score.
Yeah, it's called Score. It was produced by boy, I'm having a bad day with that, Duke Pearson.
Oh.
And it was unusual it was on Blue Note, had a side label called Solid State, where they put the white guys, basically. It was the same.
That and Mel recorded it, and they.
Yeah. And record came out pretty well. Duke hadn't heard. I used Bernard Purdy on some of it, and Chuck Rainey, and Duke had never heard of those guys yet, So it was a little different for him. But the whole experience for me was very rewarding. I had just started to write tunes, and I had met Hal Galper somewhere along the way, so he contributed some tunes. I had Larry Coryell on the record, who I had met in Seattle before he had moved to New York. We were very close friends. So it was an interesting record. I was only 21 or so. Mike was 19 or 18.
That gives me a couple of thoughts. Some of this, what you were saying, that not having hobbies. Hank Jones and I were friends, and one time I was telling Hank, a friend of mine had told me that Thad was an excellent pool player and could have been a pool hustler if he'd have desired to do so. So I said to Hank, I heard about your brother. Your brother Thad was quite a pool player, they tell me, and what about you? You got any hobbies? And Hank goes, I have no hobbies.
Yeah.
Music is all I need. And, it was funny the way he said it, So Hank, and, the other thing I was thinking of was that I too remember Mike at, I think Mike was 17 when I met him. I was at Ramblerny.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was 15.
You were a student at
Yeah, I was 15.
Wow.
And Phil Woods heard me at this intercollegiate jazz festival where they had in Miami. There was a high school all-star band. And it was a good high school all-star band. We had Bill Pierce and Mark Colby, who was a very good tenor player. Played
sure.
Maynard. They were the tenor players. Melton Mustafa, who was Melton Jones at the time, was a very good trumpet player, later played with Basie.
Yeah, sure, I know Melton.
Duffy Jackson was the drummer, and I was on alto. Phil heard us at a Saturday afternoon clinic, and my family had no money. We were really pretty poor, and he gave me a scholarship to Ramblerny. And that was a year after. Now, did you go there? I know Mike went there, but did you go?
No, but I did visit. I had already, let me get this straight. I don't think I had yet, this was the summer that I had come back to America after a 16-week State Department tour with the Indiana University Jazz Ensemble. We had won the Notre Dame Jazz Festival, and we went to the Middle East and Asia for 4 months.
Did you go to India with that band?
Yeah.
So you knew Jerry Green and Gary Campbell?
Yeah, I was there.
One guy I wondered about from that band? I met him because Green and Campbell went down to the University of Miami.
Right.
Under Jerry Coker when Jerry Coker left Indiana.
Yeah.
And Jerry heard me when I was 16,
Wow.
and 17, and he made me a soloist with the university band.
Oh.
And because we jammed with Ira Sullivan together, and I was somewhat prodigious. I thought I was prodigious till I heard Mike. Anyway, but so one guy.
Okay, finish, and I'll.
Just one guy who came to visit the university and didn't go there was this guy named Dave Llewell.
Oh yeah.
And he was a total monster.
Right. I think he went to Indiana though.
He went to Indiana, but he was visiting Florida. He went down to see Jerry Green, and Gary Campbell, and he hung out at the university. And I was there, basically living at the university. I quit high school and just decided to move in with Mike Gerber, the piano player at the university, and Coker's band, and take all the classes, and they just let me do what I wanted. But anyway, Llewell came down, and I heard he got very involved with Yogananda. At that time, he had been, really preaching the Indian philosophy and that kind of thing. But I heard he kind of went out there somewhere, and I wondered whatever happened to him, because he was truly.
Yeah, I had heard he had gone to L.A. and then I kind of lost track of him. He was a very good player, as I remember. And what I was going to say at Ramblurny, I didn't go there, but I'd just come back from this trip, and I visited him. I knew Mike was there, and I hadn't seen him. And I knew Clark Terry because he was one of the judges at the Notre Dame Jazz Festival, and he happened to be there also visiting with a couple other guys. Melba Liston was there. So we all sat in with the big band. And Mike and Richie Cole and Roger Rosenberg, 15-year-olds, they were part of the sax section. And I had met Phil previously somewhere in Chan. So it was a fortuitous day for me too, because I played with Clark for the first time.
Oh.
In the big band. It was a rehearsal, everybody sat in. It was fascinating. Phil was just wonderful.
Yeah, well, Phil, that must have been 1966.
Yeah, that sounds right. It was when I moved to New York in September of 66.
Right, so and I went to Ramblurny in 67. Mike wasn't there officially at the camp, but he came up for a week to visit.
Oh.
And Roger and I were very close. He was a good friend at the camp. We practiced together.
Yeah.
And so Roger introduced me to Mike, and the three of us practiced together. And then Mike and I just hit it off. We just had this beautiful friendship. We just really liked each other. There was something we dug about each other. And we started to write each other letters, which was interesting. I remember, for instance, when his neck got torn up.
Right.
And he wrote me this very funny letter, because he was a very funny guy. And he wrote me this funny letter about how they had taken a piece of his ass and put it in his neck. And he said he wondered what the name of this was, and all these. He had a lot of funny lines about it. But that's where we became really friendly. And when I was in New York, he was in New York. And
yeah, sure.
We used to practice and listen to records when he was living over at Dave Liebman's loft.
Yeah.
Until we literally would fall asleep with our horns in our laps and just lay the horns down, sleep for a couple more hours, wake up and start practicing again. And, I'd play piano for him. Also, he'd play piano for me. He'd play drums. He liked to play drums while I played saxophone. We played duets like that. And, we just had a wonderful time. But, so you moved to New York. You were what, about 21?
Yeah, 21.
And you met Clark, and then you played Duke Pearson and Thad and Mel. You started to play in all of those. The first time I actually heard you was, I'll get to that in a minute, but I saw you, first time I saw you, or I believe I saw you. I may have seen you at the jam session they used to have after hours with Liebman at the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Played for all that free music.
Yeah.
I would take my lessons with Richie Kamuka at the Merv Griffin show.
Oh.
Because Richie was my teacher. And, he'd take me to the Griffin show for a lesson. And we'd be sitting there having a lesson while Jim Hall And Snooky Young, these people would stand there watching us, Brookmeyer, just staring at you. And, it was kind of scary, but I forgot who was there because I was so into the lessons.
Yeah,
I
sure.
remember one day you were on that band and they were rehearsing with some kind of singer, and you had a solo, and they said you got to play a Dixieland solo.
Wow.
So you start playing this Dixieland solo, and all of a sudden, this beautiful modern line, bebop line, slips out, comes out of you, and and he took a horn out of mouth. He said, "Whoops, slipped out," and that cracked me up. That's the first time I saw you, and yeah, I just remembered that.
Well,
And I
those
heard
were
you
good
on
years.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yeah.
First Blood, Sweat, and Tears record because my junior high school friends said, "Hey, listen, Bob, there's a jazz solo on this record. There's two jazz solos. There's a saxophone and a trumpet player." And they played "I Spend the Night in a Chair, Thinking She'll Be There, but She Never Comes." The beautiful Harry Nilsson song,
Yeah.
without her. And you play a beautiful solo. And that was, the arrangement was lovely too. That ba 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 da da.
Yeah.
Who did the chart? I was just curious.
Well, it was probably a combination of Al Cooper's suggestion and Freddie Lipsius. He was the main arranger for the horns, and that sounds like one of his lines. He was great, and we still talk. He's 80 something now, and he actually has a new record that he did that I play on one tune, and it's very good. He's still playing his butt off on alto and still deeply into music. So you can see it on or hear it on and see it. There are videos on YouTube. I don't know what the name of the album is, but he just put it out a couple months ago, all these years later.
Well, he taught a long time at Berkeley, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he had many years at Berkeley. He's officially retired, but he still plays.
Oh, that's nice. And yeah, so you were doing those things and a lot of the big band stuff. I think I saw you with the Thad and Mel band.
Yeah, that could very well be Clark's band. There were a lot of everybody had a big band then, and we played at the Half Note and with Duke's band one week, and then Clark's band another week, and I was doing Monday nights with Thad and Mel because I had met Mel at yet another competition, and after the State Department tour in Vienna, there was a jazz competition in the summer of '66.
The one that
Yeah, Eddie Daniels.
Daniel.
That's where we all met. That it was. I always talk about this thing. It was so fortuitous. Eddie was there. Was already playing in Mel's band, and Thad and Mel's band, so he was kind of a shoe-in. But Franco Ambrosetti, Joachim Kuhn, Miroslav, George Mraz, Jiggs Wiggum, Joachim Kuhn, Claudio Roditi, Tomas Stanko. That's where we all met.
Were you all competitors in this for this?
Yeah, we were all I mean, they had it divided up instrument by instrument. There were so many kids there, but it was fascinating. The judges were Mel, Ron Carter, Joe Zawinul, Cannonball, JJ, and Art Farmer. Imagine that.
Wow.
So, and that just helped all of us. A lot of us moved to New York after that, and we had met those guys. Mel asked me to join the band. I started doing gigs with Ron Carter too when he needed a trumpet player, and we just helped each other. Miroslav moved, George and Jan Hammer moved shortly after, and we played together all the time. So that was really a fortuitous happenstance kind of a thing, where that was the only time that festival existed, was that one summer, and that's where we all met. I find it really fascinating.
Yeah, I think this is to get back to that, the whole idea of God and serendipity and spiritual forces. I mean, that's one of the things that makes me believe that there's something greater than us, that it isn't all just total chaos here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of signs that it might be, but I think the way the serendipity, like how an event like that brought all you cats together and you had lifetime friendships from that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. It's a great idea. I don't know why they didn't continue it, but I guess they didn't get the funding or whatever.
Was it Frederick Goulda that sponsored that?
Yeah, Frederick Gould put it all together. He was a great man.
He was a Beethoven specialist, I think, who also played
Yeah,
jazz.
yeah.
And then um, then he went with Art Blakey for a while.
Right.
That was before Horace, right?
No, it was actually after Horace. Horace, I was with for about a year and a half with Billy Cobham, Benny Maupin, and John B. Williams. But Horace decided to move to California and ended up breaking the band up. So was recommended to Art by Woody Shaw, and I knew all the. It wasn't a great period in Art Blakey's timeline. He didn't have a record deal, and he really didn't have a full-fledged band together even. But he did have Carlos Garnett and me, and a guy named Skip Crumby on bass, and occasionally Joanne Brackeen were different piano players, but she played a little more than anyone. And we played regularly, mostly at Slugs. We'd play at Slugs for like weeks at a time. So it was great because I got to meet a lot of other musicians.
Was this like 1968, 69?
Yeah, somewhere around then. And shortly after, Mike came to town, and another happenstance, he had met Barry Rogers, the trombone player, who in turn had met a couple of singer-songwriters, and they were looking for a trumpet player and a drummer. And here I'm back in town, playing with Art, but it was off and on. And Billy was in town without a gig. We were also playing with somewhat with a guy named Edwin Birdsong, but that became Dreams. The band Dreams, which was another jazz rock band that had a short-lived life, but we got signed to Columbia Records, and we did 2 albums, and they're very good. Both the records are good. I started to write songs on the second one, but all the horn parts were jammed up. Nothing was ever written down like in Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago, where they had tight arrangements. It was really loosely formed, a la Mingus, a lot of collective improvisation. The tunes changed every night, and because we didn't write anything down and we jammed everything up, it had a kind of an unusual flair to it, and it was a joie de vivre. We were all young and really excited to play, so there was something in the sound of the horn section that really caught everyone's attention and really helped our work in New York.
I played one day with Dreams. The Sanborn, I think, was playing. I think that might have been where you guys first hooked up with Sanborn.
That could be.
And he couldn't make it or something. And Mike called me and he said, "Do you want to do an afternoon rehearsal with Dreams?"
Wow.
And I remember doing it, and it was the loudest music. Alan Schwartzberg, I think, was on drums.
Oh, that could be. That was probably later Dreams. Yeah.
That was a later Dreams, right? Okay, that was because I remembered that I said, next time I do this, if I ever do it again, I'm bringing earplugs. It was, it was very loud, but it was interesting. I mean, it was kind of good loud.
Well, those bands were loud. That's why we got the effects in my wah-wah and all that stuff, so we could compete with the guitars. And Mike always wore earplugs. And as a result, that's why I have to talk loud, because I'm not that deaf, but my higher frequency in my ears are kind of gone these days. So from playing in too many loud bands.
Well, yeah, you were. There was definitely some loud bands that I never really heard. 11th House. That was Larry's band, right?
Yeah, that was great too. That was Alphonse Mouzon and Mike Mandel. We had a ball, and we were all writing tunes, and it was unusual because we're there because of the trumpet guitar front line, so to speak. And I had a lot of good moments in that band. There's some great bootleg tapes floating around. Mouzon was a wonderful drummer. He was full of chops, but he had great time, metronomic time. We did a record before he passed away with and Larry, the 11th House. Sadly, they both passed away shortly after we did. It's called Seven Signs or something like that. It's a good record, but I was amazed. I hadn't played with Alphonse in years, and we did a lot of record to a lot of the record or some of it to a click track, and and he was nailed. I wouldn't have thought that a drummer like that could when he would simplify stuff. He was metronomic in his time. A lot of those kind of drummers, you stuck a click track on them and they would get lost quickly.
Right. But
He was kind of not appreciated enough, I think. He was really a great drummer and a good businessman. He had his own record label. He had a lot going on in LA. So we missed the guy. He was a real character, and so was Larry. We had just great
I
time
like
together.
Alphonse. Larry and I were pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would. He came up to me once, and he said, "I have to thank you for something." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I was in Toronto one night, and you were jamming with Kenny Drew Jr."
Wow.
He said, "And I was listening to you guys play If I Should Lose You, and you made me realize that I hadn't been really serious about playing jazz. I'd always been serious about music, and I'd always been very serious about the guitar. But somehow hearing you that night,
Wow.
and Drew Jr., made me realize that I had to get serious on another level about it." And
nice compliment.
wasn't that, and I said, "Wow, thank you, man." So we became quite close. We would talk on the phone, and he'd say, "Let's do something together." So I was all for that. And he said, "Well, why don't we do a tour? I'll try to get Ron Carter, just the three of us, no drums, and we'll just do stuff like that." So I was all excited. Here's the story, which is very sad. He played the Iridium, and he said he was with Steve Johns and his son Daryl.
Yeah. I remember.
And he said, "Why don't you come by and play some tunes with us?" It was 2 nights. It was a Friday and a Saturday. I said, "Sure, I'll come by Friday." So I came by Friday, and he played most of the set. Then at the end of the first set, he called me up for 2 tunes. So that's fine. Anyway, we played. He wanted to play All the Things You Are, so I said, "Fine," And we had one of those moments of telepathy, the kind of moments when you're just, those moments because you experience them too. You're just inside each other's heads and hearts, and you can do no wrong. It's just one of those moments. Again, you leave the world, and we left it together, and we got this ovation. Everybody, the stupidest, most deaf person in the house, could hear that something special had just transpired. And so we got this huge ovation. Everybody was flipping out. I played the last set with him, part of the last set again. And then I said, "Larry, I'm not going to see you tomorrow night because I know now that we're going to work fine together. Just go ahead, start booking, and but you got to make a record with these guys. So I want to leave them to you tomorrow night. I don't want to interfere with this." So he said, "Good, call me Sunday. I'll be back in Florida on Sunday. We can start working on getting something together." Wonderful. So I call him on Sunday, and there's no answer. The cell phone goes right to the answering machine. And this happens a few times. And I'm saying, that's weird because maybe he lost his cell phone. He said to call. And he would already be back home because he told me, he said, "I'll be home by 3 p.m. because I'm leaving on an early flight." And then I found out he had died.
Yeah, that night.
That morning, And the saddest moment I remember was going to his memorial service over at the Namyo Renge Kyo temple, the Shirin Shoshu temple, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
He had been, and he'd made such a change in his life, right? I mean, he had been, Larry was so wild as a younger man that I, who had worked with Chet Baker, was afraid of Larry. I mean, but anyway, the saddest moment, and it made me cry at his memorial service. Tracy, his wife, came up, and she was considerably younger than Larry. And I always remember that when I tell Larry something, I tell him a joke or I tell him a story, he'd say, "Oh, I got to tell Tracy that." Even when we were just talking, he always had her in mind. And I said, "Yeah, that's love." And Tracy says, she was speaking, and she said, "When Larry and I got together, there was this age difference. And then he asked me to marry him because we just hit off so well." And I said, "Larry, it's the only thing that worries me is the age. She said, because I was imagining a day like this, because there were, I guess, 25 years between them.
Yeah.
And he said, baby, if you marry me, I promise you, I'll live to 100. She said, and that was the only time he ever lied to me. 18 years together. That was the only untruth he ever told me. And I lost it at that moment. It was,
Yeah, sure.
But
still miss him.
Yeah, there's just glad we experienced him, and so you stayed a short time with the Jazz Messengers, and then so when Mike joined Horace, you weren't with Horace at this point.
No. The second time I was with Horace because Dreams eventually broke up, so we didn't have a gig. And by then, Will Lee was the bass player, and Horace needed a band. I forget the circumstance, but the band became me, Mike, Will Lee on bass, and the young, I think he was only 17 or 18, Alvin Queen on drums. And that was another good band that lasted for a good year. We did In Pursuit of the 27th Man, although not with the band because Horace had other ideas. And a couple other records, maybe United States of Mind came in later, and we played with Horace off and on, at least recording till he passed. Did one called The Prescription for the Blues, where Mike played too many notes on one of the tunes. It was a funky tune, and Horace waved his arm and stopped the take and said, "Look, I told you I didn't want any 16th notes, and I meant it." So he stopped the take.
Mike told me about that. He said, "Yeah, you have certain restrictions."
Yeah.
He said there's certain restrictions with Horace, and there was that. But he also called me up to tell me about Tom Harrell. Wow. When you left, Tom took your place.
Yes, Tom took my place, and then eventually Bob Berg took Mike's place, and that was a hell of a band too, man. Wow.
Yeah.
I listen to that on YouTube all the time, the two of them.
Yeah, I especially like that Silver with Voices record.
Yeah.
It's an awfully nice record. Yeah, I mean, Mike actually introduced me to Tom Harrell because he said you guys would be like two peas in a pod. He says you got to meet this guy. You'd love him, and I did. And there was also, Mike did a really nice thing when I was with Mingus. Some nights were very rough. Mingus would just decide to pick on you. I mean, he could be a really nice cat, and then he could just turn around on you. And he didn't know. Plus, I had Don Pullen and George Adams, who were on the band, and they were not in love with me. I was also, 20 years old, 21, I think, and the only white guy on the band. But I don't think it was racism. I think they just didn't like me. Whatever it was, I was having a very rough time. And like Mingus would get me, he'd say, "I don't want to hear you this set." And he'd make me sit in the audience and listen to the band. He would do that. Wow. So sometimes it was really rough, and so, one night I was just almost crying. I'd been moved to, I mean, I sound like I cry a lot, but I don't. It had been a brutal evening, and I got home. It's like 3:00 in the morning, and I'm thinking, who could I just talk to, tell what? And of course, Mike would be up at 3 in the morning. So I said, I called Mike. I got to tell him what I went through tonight. So I tell Mike, the story of the shit. He made me get off a bandstand, and he yelled at me on the bandstand, and then he blah, blah, blah. And Mike says, "Sounds like you need a friend."
Yeah.
Says, "Tomorrow night," because we were working 5 nights a week at the 5 spot, called Two Saints at the time, but on St. Mark's Place. Mike says, "I'll be there tomorrow night. I'm going to come down and give you some moral support." So we go, there's Mike, right when we were starting to play. And Mingus, he knew Mike because he had been down to hear Horace. So that way he knew who Mike was. He had done that. And of course, he sees Mike and I, we got our arms around each other and we're saying hello. And you can see there's a warm friendship there. And of course, Mingus goes, "You sit down. I don't want to hear you."
Oh.
So I sit there with Mike and we listen to the band. And then Mike says he had this hot date with, his beautiful girl. And he said he only thought he'd stay for the first set. He said, but I didn't hear you. He said, I'm going to just tell her that I'm going to be late. I said, you don't have to, man, go. You don't have to stay and here, just please. He said, no, I told you I came to hear you. And you think he'll let you play the next set? I said, yeah, I think he's going to let me play the next set. He said, then I'm staying. And, he called the girl. I guess he got her before she left. And he arrived late to meet the girl. And he called me the next day and he said, you were the best thing on that band. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, and that's a friend.
Sure is.
And
that's a great story, man. And the whole Mingus thing, that stuff just doesn't happen like that anymore. With these stories are all classic.
Yeah, well, we really were interesting. We were an interesting generation that we caught the tail end of the what they might call the great generation.
Yeah.
All these cats that were around. But I tell you, I heard you guys play some stuff when I got back from Europe in 1975. You guys had Sundays at Sweet Basil.
Oh yeah.
Al Galper's group with Wayne Dockery and I think it was Billy Hart.
Yeah, it was Billy Hart and Wayne.
Wayne Dockery and Galper and you and Mike. And there were moments that were so great. I was in the audience, every Sunday I'd come and hear you guys. It was something I looked forward to every week. I didn't want to play. You didn't need me. I'd just come there and listen to you guys. And there was moments that I tell you were on the highest level of inspiration of anything I ever heard with that band of Galpers.
Well, we were together. We played quite a bit and did several records, so it was really a band. And we had several good years with that. Great years. So I'm proud of those records too.
Yeah, I actually heard some of those records too, and they're close, and I mean, they're pretty much what was going on.
Yeah.
And and Mike was playing just amazingly strong in that, and so the other thing, you were part of Jaco's word of mouth band too.
Right after Mike left, Mike had gone in to clean up his life a bit and didn't feel that being around Jaco and that influence was a good idea. So I was really a sub for him on Jaco's small group, and it was also occasionally a big band, but the front line was me and Mincer and Othello Molyneux and Jaco, and occasionally Don Elias and Peter Erskine on drums. And we had a really good run. We did one coast to coast tour on a bus where Jaco was still mentally competent enough to really take charge, but sadly, for reasons of some substance abuse, but he really had serious mental problems, and eventually he wasn't the Jaco we knew. Let's just put it like that. He was running on remote control.
Yeah, his sanity kind of slipped away. I think it was a combination of Slivovitz and cocaine.
Yeah.
That because I knew him. We were teenagers in Miami together.
Oh, right.
My first gig as a leader, Jaco was the bass player.
Oh, wow.
And we had an argument, and I fired him. And then we became friends again a couple of years later when he was working with Ira Sullivan and I was sitting in. We breached that point, and then we were pretty close. But he was. What I was going to say was, he wouldn't even smoke a joint when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
He did nothing, and then little by little he or I don't know whether it was little by little, but some years later, it was a whole different scene, you know. In fact, I mean, Mike and I, you know, a friend used to call us les enfants terribles because the terrible children. We would show up at sessions, you know, and I had a friend who came back from the West Coast with all this peyote. And,
Oh,
and so, of course, the first thing I did was call Mike and say, because he was my buddy in that too, you know. And, you know, you ever try peyote? You know, no, I'll be right over, you know. And we like had our peyote evening. And unfortunately, we tried opiates for the first time together too.
oh, yeah, that's not a great idea, especially these days.
No, these days, thank God there was
Yeah.
none of that fentanyl stuff. But you know, fortunately, you know, it didn't. You know, we survived it and got through it, and you know. But when you were there with the Galper band one night, Mike told me that he'd gotten in trouble with it. You know, and we
Oh,
promised each other that either of us ever found ourselves addicted, we would kick each other, and we would kick the other one. Would kick him in the ass. So he took me to the kitchen of Sweet Basil, and he bent over the stove and he said, "Kick. I want you to kick it. Kick me right now." You know, because you said, and I said, "Well, I'd like to, but I spent the summer living in a pharmacy with Chet Baker, so you'd have to kick me too." And you know, so do we kick each other, or do we just leave it at a stalemate? And you know? Yeah. So we laughed that off. Um, you were married. One of your marriages was to a very talented woman, Eliane Elias, and you had a daughter, uh, Amanda. And what? How's she doing?
Well,
What?
she's doing well. She just released her own CD called, ironically enough, Dreams, which was the name of that our band. I don't know if she made that connection, but she wrote all the tunes with a guy named Daniel Jakubovic, and it's very, very well done. And she has a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and happily married, and lives out on Long Island, closer into New York than we are, but we see her quite a bit. So I'm happy to say she's doing really well, and the record did very well too.
Oh, that's great. Where are you? Are you Westchester generally, or?
No, no, we're in the end of Long Island, out in the Hamptons. I had a house here for years that I rented, and when we lost my stabilized rent in New York, we ended up moving out here because it was paid for by then. The house was paid for, so there's no rent. We cut our expenses. Sounds weird that you move out to the Hamptons to cut expenses.
That is kind of
Yeah.
funny.
But yeah, the house is paid for, so there's no rent, no 20, $30 a day cab ride. So it was a good move, and we can play all night. So that's also a big plus.
Yeah, I mean that is great. Um, you made a record with Stevie Wonder. You recorded with Stevie, right?
Well, I was on the road with Stevie for about 9 or 10 months with Sanborn and a tenor player named Denny Morales and Ray Parker Jr. on drums and Ollie Jones on drums. A very good band, good background singers. Lanny Groves was one of the background singers. She became a studio singer. But Stevie was great. What can I say? He was on 100% every night. It was fascinating to watch him. I don't think I ever recorded with him though.
Oh,
I, but I learned so much from just watching him every night. He was just 100% on every night. Didn't matter how bad the gig was, what happened before we played, anything, it was just fascinating.
and did he hang out with the cats and? Uh,
Yeah, to a point. I mean, we were together in car. What he did really was work on his music 24 hours a day. He had headphones on whenever he could, polishing stuff. He was in the lead car. We drove by a car from gig to gig. It's
Like a
sometimes
caravan.
all day kind of caravan, and he was always in the front seat of the front car, so you could just see him with the headphones on and is moving from side to side. So music was his life, like all of us. But he worked really hard. It wasn't all genius. He was working on that stuff his every waking moment.
Really? Yeah. Well, sounds like it paid off.
Yeah,
And
I'm going to have to split. I didn't realize we were
yeah, I'm gonna.
much
I think
longer.
that just one little thing about Randroid.
Oh well,
How did that come about?
well, I'll tell you. You already mentioned Gary Bartz. We were in Japan, and he Gary's one of his hobbies was being a comedian. He was such a funny guy. He would come up with such great lines, like when we were in Wales and looking at all the crazy street signs. Gary turned to me and said, "Man, these motherfuckers were drunk when they invented the language." Well, and in Japan, he came over to me one night and looked me in the eye and said, "Hey, Randroid, you in there yet?" And it was early in the night. I hadn't had any drinks or anything. So he said, "Oh, look, you're not there yet. I'll come talk to you later." So after the second set, Randroid, you're in there. Okay, come on, man, let's hang out. I'd had a couple drinks or whatever. So that was his nickname for me, and that's kind of stuck. And I eventually wrote as a what would you call it, as another personality. I wrote a record with a lot
An
of
alter
lyrics
ego. Yeah.
that's called "Hanging in the City," songs of rhyme, reason, romance, and raunch. And it was a time when electronics had kicked in, and I could do a lot of the recording at home, and it was just a lot of fun to do. I mean, I had a ball. Hiram was on it, sang background vocals. Will Lee, Richard Bona, George Woody produced it. I wrote all the tunes, and it was a hard sell to try to get the thing out because nobody really wanted to hear Randy Brecker sing. But it came off. It was all humorous tunes, like
I enjoyed it.
yeah, I still love listening to that one. It's swinging. A lot of good solos. There's a lot of good music on it, and it was just so much fun to do. I wrote some poetry, whatever came to mind, and Mike was on it. We jammed up some horn lines, and
Well,
we had a ball doing that one.
it feels more like rapping than actual singing.
Yeah, yeah, it was a little singing, rapping, and I always liked playing with words. And Horace wrote lyrics to all his tunes, and I grew up with Lambert Hendricks and Ross and all that vocally, so that had a big influence on me. I just had fun writing words. I still do.
That's yeah, that's great. What are your recent projects? You are so busy. When I know that you got to go because you're so busy.
Yeah.
I call you. You're always on your way to go somewhere. It's like I got to go to Copenhagen in the morning, so we got to hang up the phone now. But um,
Well, I'm thinking about doing some kind of quartet, maybe a jazz record. I haven't recorded in a while, and I have some tunes or the beginnings of tunes laying around. So, but I have been traveling too much, so I have to get off the road a little and concentrate on writing a little more these days. But I'm having a ball playing the trumpet. I just got back from a long tour in Poland and Copenhagen, and we were on a couple jazz cruises. And Thursday, I'm going back to Germany for a couple days.
this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And I want to say he also found time to write the foreword.
Oh yeah. Well, that's great. It's
I'm
great.
going to send you one,
Yeah.
and that came out. This is a book jazz lexicon, sort of a thesaurus of musical vocabulary. Some ideas and musical kind of patterns that.
Wow. I know it's great, and you had been working on that for a long time, so I'm glad it's finally out.
Well, I appreciate your wonderful forward that you wrote, and thank you. And thank you for being here with us today. I really appreciated Randy Brecker.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you and great to see you, man.
Likewise, it's always a joy. And, you know, I want to thank you and thank everybody who tuned in today. Yeah, please, you know, I guess you say, give us a like.
Yeah.
So, you know, what do they call it? When you sign up, subscribe. Is it subscribe? And yeah, do that. I'm told to ask this.
Sure.
This is part of our media world that we live in now, but we do. It does help us more than you know when you do give us a like and or subscribe. Once again, thanks again, Randy. Thanks very much to Ada as well.
I will.
And we, you know, we'll see you, and thank you, everyone. And, you know, God bless everybody.
Yeah, thanks for everyone listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Randy. Bye-bye.